wonderful organization for only 21 years, and it feels like 1 year, but I'm enjoying it as I go along. Outside of that, I am a distinguished Toastmaster and the current District 47 Director. And District 47 includes all of the Toastmasters clubs in Southeast Florida and the Bahamas. And our network of Toastmasters spans over 140 some countries around the world. So I really appreciate all of you Toastmasters from different countries that have taken the time out to join in. Kudos to each and every one of you. Like I mentioned before, I am just a facilitator. This session is an open session whereby we share ideas, whereby we share information, and as a result of the information that we share, we all will grow together. Today's session, conflict resolution, leading beyond emotions. It's all about us not only looking at conflicts and understanding how valuable conflicts are and the need for us to manage them effectively, but to understand that if our emotions override our better judgments, we could end up causing problems not only to ourselves, but those that are around. So as we go along, if you have some questions, please utilize the chat. I will also dedicate an opportunity for you to ask those questions during the presentation because like I said before, I really would like to hear from each of you. I would like to know what it is that you have to say and how best we can navigate through this experience together. So I'm pretty much excited and ready to have a good time with each and every one of you. So the objectives of today's session is very simple. We want to define conflict. We want to discuss the effects of conflict as it relates to our emotions. We also want to define conflict resolution. We also want to discuss the levels of conflict. Then we also want to provide conflict resolution strategies. So here's my disclaimer. And I call this disclaimer a 4R rule. Conflicts are a necessary evil. And some persons may say, what? What do you mean necessary evil? Well, as we go through the session today, we'll talk about that some more. It reminds us that we are not the only people in the world. Everyone is entitled to their own opinions. That's a matter of respect. That's all it is. Nothing more, nothing less. It's all about respect. Everyone is looking for respect. As a matter of fact, everyone is entitled to respect. Just as you would want persons to respect you, you must be mindful that you should also respect them as well. So that's the first R. It's all about respect. The second thing, conflicts test our resolve. And when conflict tests our resolve, it simply means this. It provides an outlet for us to be innovative. Now, I don't know about you, but I've been in some situations whereby I didn't agree with some positions that were made. However, instead of getting riled up or losing my cool, I took a step back, I rethought the entire process, and I came up with even greater strategies. So as we look at conflicts and we look at these things, let's not look at conflict as just all bad. It helps us to be resourceful. So that's the second disclaimer. The third disclaimer is simply this. Conflict exposes who you are beyond your words and good looks. Now, the reason why I came up with this one is because we have people who could talk a good game. We have people, I know I fit in this category, dress good, smell good, look good. The exterior is on point, on fleek if you may, just nicely put together. But when conflicts arises, you see the horns start to show. You see the pitchforks start to come out. And that creates a whole different scenario. So conflict exposes who we are. So it's very important to understand while we go through conflicts that our true self, our inner self, always comes out when we are confronted with a conflict or we are confronted with situations. And then the fourth R, it's all about responsibility. And this is my final disclaimer. You are not responsible for the behaviors and actions of others. As human beings, we feel sometimes a sense of obligation to try and change people or to make people better. But the only person that you're responsible for is yourself. Personal responsibility, self-responsibility, is the most important thing about this entire process when you look at conflict. Because if you can't master yourself, you definitely cannot master anyone else. So it's all about taking on personal responsibility. And when you take on personal responsibility, that will limit or minimize you having to cast blames as it relates to somebody else. Now, conflict happens everywhere. Conflict happens everywhere. Now, with the assistance of the host, I want about 3 persons to share when we talk about conflicts happening everywhere, some of your experiences, and this is only 1 minute each. And so the first 3 that will be acknowledged by our chat monitor will allow you to go share your experience. Conflict happens everywhere. Let's see the first one who wants to dive in and take a swipe at it. Tell us about your experience as it relates to conflicts and what you did. Please raise your hand so we can see who you are.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
This is Kino Wong. I represent. It's good to be here. I was invited by Ms. Barnaby, Verna Barnaby, and we are also a part of the Bahamas National Neighborhood Watch Council under the Ministry of National Security. You know, you're talking about conflicts. Being a part of a program that deals with different diverse neighborhoods in our country, you will rise up against individuals that will challenge you in many ways. And as a leader, you have to know how to handle conflicts. And so the different type of communities that we encounter, we'll find that the same programs that we may introduce in Seabreeze in Nassau, Bahamas, may be a little different from going into Pinewood Gardens to talk about the same initiatives. And so being a leader, I find out that the best way to deal with conflict resolutions, is to navigate and to understand each dynamic area of a person. And so when you are a leader, you have to be able to sit back and listen, because everyone has a different view. And so instead of getting all angry, you deal with your conflict of resolution or conflict of interest with others a little different, and you show them more respect. And then you deal with your resources that you have to be able to encounter the different masses, or the disclaimer, like you have your 4R rules.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wang. Really appreciate that feedback. Who do we have up next? Would like to share?
All right.
You can go ahead, Cooper.
Good evening, fellow Toastmasters. My name is Toastmaster Kevin Cooper. I'm from the club in Freeport, known as Freeport Eagles 1425. It's funny because I did a speech Thursday on conflict resolution as a part of my pathways. And I spoke about my experience at work, because I was recently promoted to driver because I worked in the back of a garbage truck. And 2 of my co-workers, well, subordinates, who I'm in charge of, they were arguing at the back of the truck. So I came out to see what the problem was, and one was saying that he's the faster worker, but the other one was saying that he is the stronger worker, and they can't work together because they feel like one is better than the next. So I told them, how about you all work for one another's benefit? They did that, and we got off 2 hours earlier than expected. So my thing is, when it comes to conflict resolution, it isn't good to take one side over the next. I feel like in an instance like that, we could use the other person's strength where we are weakened, and that way we become the perfect team. And that was how I dealt with that dealt with that conflict.
Thank you. Great feedback. And then thirdly, Charmaine Goodman Davis. You can share this time.
Good afternoon, fellow Toastmasters. I am reminded of an instance where I don't know if the person was trying to provoke me into a conflict or was genuinely sharing, I guess, a moment that angered her. But as an employee working with the Royal Bahamas Police Force, I was privy to a young lady venting about how all police officers are corrupt, all police officers are no good, they're womanizers, they're loose, they're slack, etc., etc. Nothing positive to be said about police officers. Having worked with them for 30 years, I know that not all police officers are good people. Not all of them have integrity, etc., etc. However, I also know that there are some very good, some very positive, some very hardworking and committed police officers. And so rather than take the bait, if possibly I was being baited, I simply stated, it's so unfortunate that as matured persons, we're not able to be sensible when we speak in public. And what I shared really brought her to a standstill. I simply stated facts. In any and every, I would dare to say, profession, there are persons who go contrary to what they're supposed to do. Yes, you have some police officers who could do better. Yes, you have some police officers who are not committed to the job. You have doctors who molest their patients. You have attorneys who don't represent their clients properly but charge them all the same. You have pastors who lead their flock astray. And so no one is perfect. Police officers are people first, not to make an excuse for them, but they're people first, and then they're police officers. They don't adorn superhero paraphernalia when they become police officers. They are held to a higher calling or higher expectancy. That may be so, but they are human first. And so while there are some who bring disrepute or ill repute to the organization, there are way more who hold firm to the mandate of the Royal Bahamas Police Force. And so I simply stated those facts, and she didn't say anything else. I don't know if I fueled her fire or if I shut her fire down, but at the end of the day, I think I quashed a possible conflict. Thank you.
Thank you. I think you did. And we have some persons that weighed in on the chat, and chat Mono will just read a few of those comments before we.
Hello, Leo. Sharon here.
Thank you. Now, I know some other persons want to share, and I'll get you in at a later point in our discussion. But thank you all so much for weighing in. And I'm really happy that you utilize the opportunity to mediate and find solutions to conflict. Now, conflict happens, like we said, everywhere. Relationships. And we have stories, marriages. Teeth and tongue, they say in the Bahamas, always clashes. They will always fall out. At home. And during these COVID-19 times, we have seen a lot of that because people get to spend a lot of time with their family members, with their loved ones, around friends. And because of this, a lot of differences happen on social media. People pick on you for no reason. They bully you. They start fights or wars, and they expect you to join in. At civic meetings or in civic arenas, whether you're part of Toastmasters like some of us, whether you are part of Rotary, Kiwanis, there's always a degree of conflict that presents itself. When you go to the grocery store, and like I said, during this whole episode of COVID-19, we've seen the worst of the worst. people fighting for water, people fighting for toilet paper. It is being crazy. At church and in the Bahamas, I don't want to start this one because over the course of these few weeks, we've seen members who are part of churches and pastors go at it head to head at work. We spend a lot of time on our jobs. Some of us a minimum of 40 hours a week, and some even more. While driving, you're playing your nice music, trying to get your mind ready for a good day until you get on that light. And before the light changes, someone in the back of you acts the fool and creates conflict. And for some of us, it totally ruins our day. We can't focus anymore. We can't think anymore because we get riled up as it relates to our emotions. The greatest question I want to ask each and every one participating in this session today is actually, who are you? I mentioned earlier that you are not responsible for the way somebody else reacts. You're not responsible for the way someone else behaves. But the greatest conflict is not knowing who you are as an individual, not knowing the things that drive you, the things that annoy you, not having or coming to grips with your own imperfections and your own strengths as a person. So when I talk about knowing who we are as individuals, I'm talking about building character, our processes, our feelings, and being able to accept those feelings, understand those feelings, so that we can relate to other people. Our value system. What are the things that you prize or you hold dear to? Your beliefs. And as this call fields a variety of persons, we believe different things. And then our behavior, because based on our thoughts, our feelings, our values, and our beliefs, they actually shape our behavior. And those things form our character. So as we live and as we coexist with other people, we cannot feel as if our view is always the best, or always right. One of the things I say to persons when I get into a conflict is I never seek to be right. I seek what is right. Because depending on the situation, what is right becomes relative, depending on who's saying it and who's saying it. But we'll touch on that some more. So when I talk about our thought process, first of all, I want to talk about our mind, how we perceive and make sense of the world around us. The mind is so intricate, the mind is so delicate that if we fuel our mind with the wrong things, it can have a negative effect on us emotionally. It can have a negative effect on our relationships. So it's very important that as the battleground is here, we take control of our mind. And as I go through these four, I want to give you some golden nuggets. And the first nugget is this: people process things differently. Now, I know you feel strongly about a particular thing, but just because you feel that way, don't expect me to feel the way that you feel. Just because you are passionate about something, don't feel slighted if I don't share that similar passion, because how I process things is different from you. The second thing is perception. And our perception has everything to do with our outlook. Because we process things differently, we understand and interpret things differently. Here you have an optimist. An optimist sees the glass half full. The pessimist sees it differently. Same glass, same amount of water, but the pessimist sees the glass empty. Now, I'm going to ask this question, and you don't have to answer, but I want you to think about it. Which one is right? Which one is right? As a matter of fact, while I have that on the floor, I will take one person. Please throw your hand up quickly. Which one of these two individuals are right? Go ahead, Alicia. You wanted to share? Which
I think they're both right.
Alicia, you think they both are right? Okay, I agree with you. Antoinette Fox, thank you for joining in, one of my mentors. Which one of the two are right?
Good afternoon. I don't feel like any are specifically right. They are just each other's perception, because I can perceive the glass half empty in a situation, and in another situation, I can perceive it half full. It just depends on my perception at that time.
And you are absolutely correct. Now, as it relates to some of the information, I'm noticing that you may not see these slides, but what I will do, you would please, I will, my email address will be on the back of this presentation. Shoot me an email and I will send you the presentation. So golden nugget number 2, we can all see, hear the same thing and arrive at different conclusions. And this is one of the great puzzlers for us as human beings. We look at something out of our eyes and we're saying, how come you can't see this? Because I'm feeling if I see it, then you should see it too. But then, like I said before, our perceptions, our outlooks are totally different. And we need to understand when we deal with people that we all see things differently. The third thing, our values, our principles. And if you as an individual have not clearly defined what your values are or your principles are, then it means that you're actually setting up yourself for greater levels of conflict or greater levels of disagreement. So it's important for you to actually sit down and write down your values. Now, some of our values were handed down to us by our parents. Some of our values changed as we got older and our exposure to things became a little bit different. That's okay. But every one of us need to have our own dedicated set of values, because when you end up in a conflict or you end up in a difficult situation, these values are the things that will help you to get grounded. These values will actually give you some leverage to return to a place so that you don't overreact and allow your emotions to take you over the cliff. Because when you go over the cliff, and if you're like me, I have a temper problem. Now, all of my friends say to me all the time, not you, you're one of the most humble, patient people that I know. But they don't know I go from 0 to 1,000 in a second. And because I know it, I don't allow people to dictate or control my emotions, because when I get riled up, I get so overwhelmed, I cannot speak. My hands start to shake and tremble. And in my mind, I'm thinking, and this is wrong, don't judge me, I'm only human. Disclaimer again. If I could shake you, tell you, drop the pieces, I would do that. But because I control my emotions, I will not allow anyone to take me to that place. So our values will help us define what is acceptable. It fuels our emotions and it will dictate a response. That is very important. So people respond to situations against the backdrop of their value system, which may differ from your own. And can I just throw this out? It's okay. It is okay. One of the things I've learned is that when you respect people and you understand that people have differences, you leave them with their values. It's okay. It's not that serious. It's not the end of the world. And the fourth thing is interests, ambitions. People have a personal connection or involvement to things based on their priorities. And here we have something overlapping again. What is a priority for somebody else may not necessarily be a priority for you. And you have to understand and allow people their space, their time to be able to maneuver. So priorities or motives drive decisions and reactions in every situation. So what is in it for me factor impacts the outcome. It always does. And an excellent way to look at it, Maslow hierarchy of needs puts it this way. He claims, and for all of those psychology persons like myself, there's a hierarchy of needs all of us have. And my encouragement is that you look at it so that at the end of the day, it will help you. Our basic need, number one, our psychological need, our need for air, water, food, shelter, sleep, clothing. Everybody wants it. Everyone needs it. Then safety, our personal security, employment, resources, health, and property. Those things are very important. That's everyone's basic need. So just as that is a basic need for you, it is a basic need for somebody else. Now let's talk about our psychological needs, love and belonging, friendship, intimacy, family, a sense of connection. Everyone wants to be a part of something. Everyone wants to feel special. And then esteem, which has everything to do with respect again, self-esteem, status, recognition, strength, and freedom. And then the final tier is self-fulfillment needs, self-actualization, our desire to become the most that we can be. And in our conflicts, if we don't understand that just as you or I or me, I want to win, the other person who's involved in the conflict or the group wants to win as well. And if we are only considering ourselves and how it's impacting us, we will miss the opportunity to find a solution that's suitable for everyone else. So we put it this way. As it relates to many conflicts, the communication process teaches us something very important. Our nonverbal communication accounts for 65%. Some studies say 55, but we'll rest here at 65% of that communication process. As a matter of fact, before someone says a word to you, just the way they look at you, just their tone, inflection, the way they sit, the way they stand, make you feel a particular way. It makes you feel as if this person, they're gonna get me upset today. I really don't want to hear what this person has to say because they already start off wrong. I don't like their approach. But that person hasn't said anything to you yet. But there's so much power in nonverbal gestures and communication. If we're not careful, we could disqualify any aspect of a resolve. And then there's a powerful quote that I always like to share, and it's from Maya Angelou. I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you make them feel. So as we cultivate relationships, whether it be in our homes, with our spouses, in our marriages, as we cultivate relationships on our jobs, as we cultivate relationships in civil society or in our corporate or civic arenas, we must remember that we are dealing with people who are like you, with feelings and emotions, with desires, who are looking for respect, who are looking to be treated fairly, who are looking to be heard and listened to. And if we allow how we feel in some cases to erode that possibility, it will cause greater conflicts. And one thing I've learned about a fire, when a fire starts, and according to what is burning, it could destroy very quickly. And as a matter of fact, let's put it in layman's terms. You can build a house in a few months, a few weeks, or even years, but a fire could destroy that house in a few seconds. And that's how conflict is if we do not resolve them properly. And then attitude. So, case in point, you had a disagreement with someone, and because you just wanted them to know your position, you wanted them to know that you are the boss. I am the CEO. I am in charge here. They made me the supervisor, not you. And what you do is you pour gasoline or you pour fuel on that conflict. And because we're humans, that's where the attitude shows up. You get a response. Human beings are emotional creatures driven by feelings. And the golden nugget here, for every action, there is a reaction. Based on how you deal with your interactions, you could get a positive response or you could get a negative response. But the response you get is totally on you. Now, I would just like to stick a pin right there and field some questions or concerns or some points that a few persons may have, and I'll take 3. Please raise your hand and we'll acknowledge you before we move on. Go ahead, Erica Williams.
Good afternoon, everyone. I just wanted to comment that the presentation was an excellent presentation and that this is something I personally feel as if should be put in the school program, into the school curriculum. I think it may really help a lot of young men and women in what they're going through. So when it's time for them to come out into the real world, they will have a better understanding, a better appreciation of conflict resolution and how to deal with it, because they would have been taught from a younger age. I think that would really help us out with what we're experiencing right now.
Thank you very much, Erica. Wonderful input. Who do you have next? You can go ahead, Cynthia. Cynthia Beckles. Cynthia, feel free to unmute yourself so you could share. Thank you. What do you do when conflict is escalating? Cynthia, I will address that in a minute. I don't want to preempt that. We'll take one more before we move on. Okay, so we'll move on and come back to some of those things. Like I said, for every action, there is a reaction. And when we're dealing with conflict, we want great outcomes. So I found this interesting picture, and I thought I'll share this, because sometimes when we are onto something, we feel that we are right. And if we don't practice active listening, we will disqualify and denounce everything the next person has to say. So just because you're right, it does not mean I am wrong. You just haven't seen life from my side. And it's always important in your discourse to be balanced and neutral as much as possible. Because even in this diagram, you have the number 6, which could also be flipped to be the number 9. But these two guys are arguing. And like I mentioned before, which one is right? And you will often find that when you get to the bottom of conflict, some of the things that escalate didn't have to go there. And some of those things were trivial. We turn molehills into mountains. But the detriment of it is we ruin relationships, we ruin great friendships, and we sever ties that sometimes are very helpful to us. So when we talk about conflict resolution, we're talking about the process where individuals reach a peaceful resolve to a dispute. And it's with the understanding, like I mentioned before, that we all are humans. There are 4 levels of conflicts that I want to touch briefly. Interpersonal conflict, that's individual conflict, whether it be at work or whether you have to make a personal decision. Let's say you've gone through several applications with the notion of hiring, and you have several good candidates, and you're at a toss-up as it relates to who you will hire. That's an individual conflict. Anything that you have to process as an individual, that's where individual conflict comes in. Then interpersonal conflict between individuals. And this can happen anywhere, at work, in your work organization. It can happen in your civic arenas. It can happen at church, because people will often differ as it relates to opinions and views. Then intra-group conflict. Some of us, where we work in smaller groups, but then we're part of a larger corporation or a larger entity. And sometimes when we have to do our individual group work, and we have to take it to the larger body, they have a problem with it, or they reject it, or they don't treat us right, or give us that level of respect. That in itself can create conflict. And then we also have intergroup conflict with the wider body, and something that we often see in organizations and corporate cooperations, as the case may be. So here are some steps, because I really want to get to talking to us as it relates to dealing with conflict, that I want us to employ when dealing with these things. Calm down. Calm down. As a matter of fact, this isn't the first time you've encountered something. This isn't the first time that something has gotten you upset. And when I say something, I want to bring this up. All of us as human beings, we carry baggage. And let me put it like this. You were fired or you quit a job because they didn't treat you right. They didn't respect you. They were negative against you. And you go to another job. Now, when you reach to your new job, you carry the baggage from that old job. Now, the mind is so tricky that it presents triggers from time to time. When those triggers happen at the new job, you start to shut down, you start to react and respond to those persons, treating them and beating them with the stick from the old job. So it's good to take a step back, calm down, and remember things are not always the way that they seem. Sometimes people may just be joking, and it's okay to take a step back. And if you don't like what somebody says to you, then let them know. If there's a problem, don't always sweep it under the carpet, because if you sweep dirt under the carpet, the dirt doesn't magically disappear. The dirt will be there tomorrow and the day after that. So you have to acknowledge it, because acknowledging that there's a conflict takes you one step closer to addressing that conflict. Stay grounded. Michelle Obama says this, and I love this quote: when they go low, you go high. And being emotional as human beings, we have 5 senses. That's why when it's cold, we try and get something to warm us up. When it's hot, we sweat, we get something to cool us down. So when people get on our last nerves, take us for granted, or disrespects us, there is that normal human notion to react because we are emotional. That is why we feel betrayed. That is why we feel hurt. That is why we get jealous. That is why we get annoyed. Understanding that it's okay to feel this way. However, how we process, how we respond when we have these feelings is important. And if our principles and values and the backdrop and the glue that keeps us grounded, we will act on a character and regret decisions because we didn't think. Point 4, seek to understand. Sometimes we always seek to be understood, but try seeing things from the other person's point of view. And when you see things from the other person's point of view, you will understand in some disagreements that a lot of the anger emotions is not directed at you. It's directed at something else that has happened, some unresolved issue from the past that they never addressed. You may have been, or you might be the straw that breaks the camel's back. So seek to understand. And when you establish that level of understanding, then you establish a boundary, or you establish a unified approach to bring synergy to the situation. And number 5, agree to disagree. Now, there are some topics I try to avoid and stay away from because they cause a lot of problems. Religion, politics, and even in the Bahamas for those cultural folks, junkanoo. Because we get so passionate about the things that we love, the things that we enjoy, that we forget that our views may somehow impede or be disrespectful to somebody else. So understanding that to avoid conflict means that I could respect somebody's opinion and agree to disagree. It's okay. Everyone has a view. Everyone has a right. Everyone has a voice, and they deserve to be heard. Now, if it comes to a place whereby it's totally disrespectful, it's totally causing you to be unsettled, then you need to move yourself away from that experience. Like I mentioned before, you are not responsible for the behavior of somebody else. You are responsible for yourself. And if you stay there with the notion that I just want to prove my point, your situation is going to escalate. And when it escalates, it's going to be hell to try and de escalate that situation. Bring in a neutral party, because when it's the two of you, sometimes we don't want to allow the person the opportunity to speak or express themselves. Because, like I said before, we have preconceived notions. We shut down because we have already disqualified the person or anything that they have to say before we even gave them the opportunity to say it. Then you know it's time to bring in somebody else. Don't take it personal. Deal with the problem. Do not feel that everything is an attack against you. Because I've learned that people are not so much against you, they're in it for themselves. Because, like I mentioned before, people are trying to get theirs, just as if you're trying to get yours. And understanding that I'm going to wear some of these situations loose will cause you to sleep better at night, will cause you to actually be at peace, because you don't control people, how they think, and what they do. You control yourself and your response. Number 8, attack the problem, not the person. When you deal with the problem, you start to change the way you speak. I understand, as opposed to, you always do this. And you use words that cause the conflict to escalate. Try to avoid those things. Then clearly communicate your feelings. The art of communication is so rich that if we would just take the opportunity to actively listen to what the other person has to say, we will understand where that person is coming from. But then you have to actually stop, and you have to take the time to do it. And nothing is wrong with doing that. And when you communicate, it's okay to say, I'm sorry. It's okay to say, I didn't mean it that way. It's okay to validate the other person, even if they might be wrong or their actions might be wrong. But being the mature person, being the person who stands up as a leader, will help at the end of the day. And then, to get the win, you all must decide on the course of action. And you might say, what about if that person isn't ready? Give them space. I've learned that the world is a cycle, and everything that we want to address cannot be addressed today. Let them sleep on it. Give them an opportunity to go through it. Calm down. Now, you may say, what should I do in the meantime? Well, I'll help you. Slow down, keep calm, be positive, take it easy, unplug. And when I say unplug, find ways and avenues to de-stress. Whether you dance, whether you sing, whether you write, whether you decide to play some games or do all of those other stuff, they are very helpful. Have some fun. I've learned through this whole COVID-19 pandemic, life is short. And I never dreamed that I would be in a place whereby everything in the world would stop. And so for me, fighting over trivial things makes no sense. Arguments that I do not need to get in, I leave them alone. When people feel as if they have an upper hand, I give them that opportunity. I'm not fighting people for things that makes no sense. I promise myself to be so strong that nothing can disturb my peace of mind. I cannot give my peace and tranquility to my job, to my children, to my relationships. I have to own it. Breathe. Take a deep breath. Relax. Go outside. And in the Bahamas, we're experiencing lockdown, so you have to stay. When you say go outside, go on the porch and come back inside. Take everything with a smile and then meditate. Utilize a source or strength beyond your own. And for me, it's God. It's having and knowing that I have confidence in the Lord Jesus Christ, who is my strength. And he helps me. Because if you take it on by yourself, you're going to realize that your human strength cannot handle the load. So I want us to remember these things as we deal with conflict and leading beyond our emotions. When dealing with people, let us remember we are not dealing with creatures of logic. We are dealing with creatures of emotion, creatures bristling with prejudices and motivated by pride and vanity. Dale Carnegie, and he wrote this when he spoke about how to win friends and influence people in his book. So at this time, we've talked about a lot of stuff and we've shared a lot. Now I'm opening the floor to questions. I'm opening the floor to comments. I'm opening the floor to those who wish to share at this time.
You,
We weren't able to get your email address just now. It went too fast.
I'll go back to that slide for you so that you can put that, so that you can see my email address.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay. And Cooper, you have a question, you can go ahead.
yeah. Yes, thank you. On the topic of managing a conflict, when someone insults or embarrasses you in public, do you have to rectify that in public, or do you have to pull them to the side and talk to them personally?
Now, that depends. If dealing with it in public is going to cause an escalation of the conflict, then you may have to seek to deal with that another day. The challenge with that is when people embarrass us, the natural human response is, I ain't going down like that. I'm going to make you feel, that's how you made me feel, or even worse. So being in the situation, you have to gauge it. Even if you have to communicate, I didn't like what you said to me, or the way that you said it, and move on, then that may be a way to deal with it. But you have to ensure that you safeguard yourself and the whole integrity of the process.
Can I ask another?
Yeah,
It's in reference to that question. Okay.
Go ahead.
The reason I stated in public is because don't people feel if you're disrespected by someone else, it's okay for them to disrespect you?
Now, that goes several ways because people are different. And like I mentioned before, you have to actually post that against the backdrop of your own personal values. Just as somebody see and they draw the conclusion, oh, you allowed a person to belittle you and you did nothing. Somebody else is going to look at that and say, this person was mature. This person was a bigger person. I respect what that person did because they could have stooped low, but they chose to do it a different way. So as the individual and your own values, you have to decide that course of action because at the end of the day, you have to live with that decision, not the people who are on the outside looking in. It's you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Nikita, you can go ahead. I see some raised hands. Not allow the chat monitor to read some of the comments at this time. Thank you very much, Nikita. I saw some hands raised. I trust everyone was able to send me your email address. Once I get your email address, I will ensure that you get a PowerPoint. Thank you very much. I know we can go on. There's another session that will start shortly, but my closing words to everyone that joined the call is this, and it's taken from John Maxwell. As leaders, because all of you are, whether you lead in your professional life, whether you lead in your personal life, whether you lead in your families. Leadership is all about influence, nothing more, nothing less. And if people are going to follow you, you must remember that people will only follow you based on your ability to influence them. Your title doesn't make you, you make the title. And if you're a leader who believes that your status is equivalent to your rank or stature in life, you would have missed it. Because this whole COVID 19 experience teaches that some titles that people thought were very, very meaningful became meaningless. And that isn't to debase anyone, it's just a reminder as human beings, our value on earth is to add value to other people. And that's the kind of thing that makes the world go round. So I appreciate your presence today. I appreciate your participating with us today, those that have joined us from Africa and all around the world. And I must thank you. And before I leave, I see one more comment. Oscar, I'll entertain you because you're a good friend, and we'll sign off. Go ahead, Oscar.
Great presentation, Toastmaster Burrows. I liked what was saying. One of the things that I wanted to make a point is, and sometimes in dealing with conflict resolution, is dealing with your internal self. There was a topic I'm about to speak tomorrow. It's called dealing with pain. One of the greatest things that we have to address is pain sometimes bring out the ugliness in us that we have to address and mature. And there are not much people that are willing to deal with pain. But when you actually embrace pain from a positive perspective, it really shows you and it matures you. It gives you hope and it places you to a place that you've never been. And I just wanted to piggyback on what you said because I believe that we are all at different places of influence. But I also want us to know that conflict resolution, as you said in your disclaimer, takes us to a place that we have never been to make the leader in us come out greater. And I just wanted to give that point. But thank you for the present.
Thank you very much to our mastermind of this group. Stefan, is there anything else as we close out?
No, I think you pretty much said it all, Leo. Once again, let me just thank you for being a part of this class today. Trust that everyone who entered in and tuned in gained some kind of knowledge about conflict resolution. Like I said, it was a tremendous presentation. You can see by all of the comments from the persons who are joining us. We are at the 3 o'clock point, which is for our next class, which is on the art of singing with Carissa Smith. I encourage all of you to perhaps stay in and tune in for that. But if there aren't any other questions or concerns from any of the other Toastmasters and Bridge Masterclass persons, we'll go ahead and end this session.
Thank you very much.
Let us know where we can find you, all of that good stuff, just for persons who might have not seen the.
Thank you. If you're looking for me, you can find me on Facebook, Leonardo Burrows, just by that name. You can also find me www.toastmastersd47.org. That's our Toastmasters website. Thank you all so much for participating. Have a great evening. I look forward to the next session.